Alright, in this video we're going to look at logical operators. So go ahead and start off. Let's take a look at our starter code here. So we're just going to put in how many zones are we traveling, and then we'll put in what is your status. And you should always test your code frequently, so let's just go ahead and test out our code here. We'll put in E1 for example 1, how many zones. And again, I'll just put 2 for now. And what's your status? I'll just say adult. Alright, and we verified that our output is working there. Alright, so let's take a look again at logical operators. So in JavaScript, the logical and or connect more than one conditional expressions. And when we look at the and is a two ampersands. Make that a little thicker there. And the or are two pipes. The two pipes are the two kind of vertical lines right above the enter key. All right, so typically you want to use logical operators when connecting two different variables or conditions. Now, if you're just creating conditions with a single variable, you might want to use the threshold or chaining technique that we looked at in a previous lesson. So, for example, let's say we were looking at values less than 10. We could say x. We could say if x less than 10, and the next threshold could be something like else if x less than 20. And then again, let's say if we were looking at something that was greater than 20, assuming that they're all positive numbers, we could just say else. So again, if we're just using one single variable to kind of take care of the conditions, I would consider using this threshold chaining technique. Otherwise, what we're going to look at in today's lesson is using logical operators to, again, connect two different variables or conditions. So in example 1, we're going to look at a problem that looks very similar to one that we've done before. And so we're traveling to New York City, and we're trying to figure out how much we're going to pay. So first off, let's take a look at this chart here. So we've got zones, and there are many zones, in fact, but we'll just kind of stick to 3 zones here. So we've got zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3, and then we've got adult fares, and then we've got senior, disabled, or one-way fares. So with adult fares, if you're coming from just one zone, you're traveling just through one zone, that'll be $1.85. Or if you're traveling in 3 zones, that would be $4.50. Now, if you were a senior, disabled, or child, again, if you're traveling in just one zone, it would be 85 cents. Or if you're traveling in 3 zones, it would be $2.05. All right, so let's think about how we would do this via programming. So first off, you should ask yourself, what question should you ask? And also, what condition should we work on first? And why? So I would say the first question we could ask is, let's say, how many zones? So let's say, how many zones? Okay, it could be one question there. And another condition might be status. So again, the status might be adult, and then the other statuses were child / senior / disabled. Now, the next question here is, which condition should we work on first and why? So if you think about it, there are only 2 adult or fair statuses. There are only 2 statuses. And my daughter wanted to know if she could use her computer, but
Please.
no, no, I'm doing a video. I have to set it up.
Can I use my?
Okay. All right, so we'll start off with statuses because again, there's only two statuses here. There actually are more zones. There are actually like 15 zones or so. So we'll just stick to 3 zones to make our lives easy. So if you use nested conditionals, and we'll just kind of compare because there are many different ways to write code. There's not necessarily just one way. So if you were to use nested conditionals, your code might look something like this. So again, as we've done in previous lessons, if status equal adults, then inside of that we would have if zones equal 1. So again, that's like one way to do it. And instead, if we use logical operators, how could we join these together? And the answer here is that we would use the AND, so that's ampersand, ampersand. So let's take a look at what that code would look like here. So again, this code that we've kind of learned this technique in previous lessons would be the equivalent of using the AND here. So let's go ahead and type out that code inside of our code editor and test it out. And so we've got if status equal adult, and then we'll connect that with ampersand, ampersand, zones equal 1. We'll say console log $1.85. Okay, again, test your code frequently. I would do it after every condition I write. And so we have E1, and how many zones we're traveling. So far we've just coded 1 zone, so we'll just put in 1 here. And status, we'll just say adult over here. So is that answer right? We got $1.85, so that looks good to me. All right, so complete the rest of the conditions on your own for zones 2 and 3. Now my hint here is you should think about, in order to continue this on, is think about how you would use an else if. Again, you're creating another condition. You're putting in the conditions over here. Again, always have that open curly, press enter, and then put your output, your console log, right over here. All right, so let's go back to the lesson here. And so next up, we've got seniors, disabled, or child. So for this part, which logical operator should we use? So again, we've got senior, disabled, and child. And so keyword here, of course, is or. So we're going to use the logical or, which is the ampersand and, sorry, is the pipe and then pipe. So I'll just show a couple of different versions here, and we can give that a try. So in version 1, we've got else if status equal child and zone 1. Then we have, we'll charge them 85 cents. So we'll go down, we'll go back to our code editor over here. And so we'll kind of like skip a little space here because we know we have to finish our adult code. Let's put in here else if, and we'll put in status equal child, and we'll put in zones equal 1, and then again we'll put in console.log 85 cents. All right, and so again, let's test this out. Every time you write some new code, you should always test things out. So we'll say E1 here. How many zones are we traveling? I'll just say 1 here. And this time our status is child. And so when we take a look at our results here, we get that 85 cents that we were expecting. All right, so now in our next version, we're going to look at senior. Now, something to keep in mind, and this is something that I did not remember to say during the original class, but I'll mention it here. You do have to keep in mind order of operations. So just like in math class, parentheses are evaluated before the logical operators. So do be careful that for this entire OR expression over here, you want to put the entire ORs all within parentheses. And the reason why is because in JavaScript, there is short circuit evaluation. So short circuit evaluation means that if the first expression evaluates to true, then the entire expression will be true. And JavaScript will ignore any of the expressions to the right of it. So again, it's important that you put parentheses around those ORs, otherwise you will get an unexpected result. So let's go ahead here and we'll add our senior. So we'll add status equal, equal senior. And again, we're going to put that whole OR expression in parentheses. And again, let's test this out again. So we'll click on run, and we'll do E1. And then how many zones we're traveling, we'll say 1 again. And status, again, we'll say senior. And again, we get the result that we're looking for, which is 85 cents. All right, so do keep in mind here, as I mentioned before, keep those parentheses there. So this is our version 2 here. We added senior. And last but not least, we'll add our OR disabled. So again, we're looking for child or senior or disabled. And so let's go back to our code here. And we're going to go ahead and, again, add within those parentheses OR status equal disabled. And again, we'll test this out here. Let's see what happens. We've got E1, we've got 1 zone, and we've got status, we've got disabled. And again, we get the 85 cents that we were looking for. All right, so that's it for that one. All right, so now the next problem here is you decide to go to Rutgers and need to figure out how much money you're going to pay. So in Rutgers, actually, it's very complicated in terms of how much you're going to pay. There's actually a number of different schools inside of Rutgers, and in each school, there's actually different amounts for each school. But, you know, we're not going to get so complicated about that. We'll just kind of stick to the simplified version that's on their website that I think takes the average of those. So, New Jersey residents, because it's a public university, New Jersey residents pay approximately $12,000 per semester. Now, it doesn't matter if you're living on campus or off campus. Again, you're paying that New Jersey state tuition, which is about $12,230. Now, they'll also charge you some fees, a nominal amount of $3,177. And for room and board, they'll charge you $13,075. So if you were to add all these up for commuters are people who might travel from home, etc., that would cost you $15,000. Now, on the other hand, if you're living on campus and you had to pay for room and board, that would cost you $28,482. All right. Now, meanwhile, if you're a non-New Jersey resident, Rutgers has a different tuition rate. So the different tuition rate here is $29,000, which is a pretty big jump between $29,000 and $12,000. That's more than double. And again, it doesn't matter if you're living on campus or off campus. If you're a non-New Jersey resident, they'll still charge you $29,000. Fees are the same. That fee of $3,177. And again, it doesn't matter if you're a New Jersey resident or not. If you live on campus, they'll charge you $13,000. So again, the grand total that per semester, if you're a non-New Jersey resident, would be $32,189. And again, if you're living on campus, they'll charge you an extra $13,000. So that's $45,264. All right, so now let's think about what questions do we need to ask here. And what conditions should we work on first? So some questions we might want to ask here are you a New Jersey resident? Okay, and again, that could be, let's say, yes or no here. And the next question here might be housing. So again, if you're using housing, that would be one charge. Or if you're living at home and commuting, hopefully that'll be free if your parents aren't charging you money for that. So again, we could say like housing. We could also say yes or no. So can we use logical operators here? Well, yes, we can use logical operators here. Again, different ways to do this. So some different conditions you might want to think about combining are things like, let's say, are you New Jersey residents? And are you New Jersey residents? And are you using the room and board housing? So again, you can kind of combine that there. Or if you're not, then it would be that amount over here. If you are, it would be this amount. Also, another condition is if you're a non-New Jersey resident, and again, you're using room and board, then it would be this amount over here. Okay, so different possibilities here. Just think that life is a whole bunch of conditional statements. All right, so some constant variables. Constant variables are variable values that do not change in your program. These might be helpful for you to express your answer. So you use constant variables to express a value that is fixed inside of your program. So if you think about some of the variables that some possible constant variables that we could use inside of this problem, we could do things like, let's say, for tuition, we'll call it tuition. I'm just giving some examples here. Tuition, and we'll call it in-state. And that was $12,230. And then let's say we had another tuition rate, and that was out of state. So I'll say outstate. And that was $29,012. Okay. Housing was $13,075. And another variable that we might want to consider is fees. And so the fees were $3,177. So again, our problem here, what you're trying to look to do is to total up the cost of going to Rutgers for one semester. Think about if you're an in-state person or an out-of-state person, and whether or not you're taking advantage of the student housing. All right, so again, I kind of put some starter code here for you to use potentially. So those are my variables over there. We've got var room board equals $1375, and then we've got var fees of $3,077. All right, I hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next video.